You know that scene in Jaws where the shark fin pops up and then goes back under the water, and you know the shark's still there, but it's just gone for the moment. That's sort of how college football feels a little bit, and especially Virginia Tech these days. There's never a dull moment as you got new staff, the transfer portal looming, and look at that. Merry Christmas. We even got a Christmas tree here on set as we welcome you into another live edition of Kolby's Corner, coming to you here live from Blacksburg, Virginia on December 15th, year of our Lord 2025. We'll get into all those new hires as we just sort of talked about. The largest donation in program history sort of out of left field announced today. A little bit of the transfer portal, like I said, that shark fin looming off, a little bit of high school recruiting, and some general college football storylines. And if I miss any of those topics, make sure to jump in the live chat down below because it's been hectic trying to stack this show. If I miss anything or you have any questions, jump in the live chat on YouTube or X. And I appreciate all the support. If you're new around here, make sure to subscribe. Just recently ticked past 1,500 right before we clicked live, which is amazing in 4 months. I mean, cannot thank everyone enough for the support. So it's completely free. Click subscribe. Helps me out a ton. Thank you guys. 69% of viewers are not subscribed. The last time I came to you with that petition, we were at 80%. So great job. Be a friend, tell a friend. Make sure to subscribe so we can keep good content rolling all throughout the transfer portal and into the new year. Programming note before we get going, no show Wednesday. I know we've been going Monday, Wednesday. Got last final exam tomorrow with the exam schedule and some travel schedules. Going to shift that Wednesday show to potentially later in the week. That's not to say we won't pick it up around the holiday season, but might be changing the cadence of shows heading into the new year. But we're going to have a ton of content coming out around Christmas and into the new year. So don't worry about that, but no show Wednesday. Just to touch on that. And I'll keep you posted. Follow right there at the social, Kolby_Crawford, for any new show times. But yeah, with that, let's jump right into it. Appreciate all the support. Make sure to subscribe, jump in the live chat, and let's have a good time tonight. First off, let's get into some of these new coaches. And I think there's no better place to start than Norval McKenzie, the Atlanta native who was the Georgia Tech running backs coach and run game coordinator. And I think most importantly to highlight on that is run game coordinator. When you know the offensive coordinator he was working under, Buster Faulkner, I think, was quietly, or maybe not quietly, arguably the best or one of the best young up-and-coming play callers in college football, was highly, highly regarded. Obviously just went to Florida to go join John Summerall's staff and be the offensive coordinator there. But when you saw the run schemes they were able to develop with Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, multiple guys, and to learn under him, and I know titles are titles, but the tutelage of run game coordinator, I absolutely love this hire. In talking to different people in the industry, not only from an on-the-field perspective, but a recruiting perspective. And we'll get into the Elijah Brooks and how different people feel. But, I mean, just personally, if you were to grade this hire taking off any lens, I think this is an absolutely incredible hire for Virginia Tech and James Franklin. I think it's an upgrade there at that running back position. And just talking to people who have worked adjacently, worked around McKenzie. And, you know, it's tough. Obviously was an Atlanta guy. And there's the tie-in with James Franklin. He came in at Vanderbilt right after kind of Franklin was leaving. He left right as Franklin was arriving there. Obviously played at Vanderbilt, but, you know, an Atlanta guy. So to leave Georgia Tech, they're obviously sort of cleaning house on that offensive side of the ball after Faulkner left. But this is someone that has very, very rave reviews around the industry. I know there were some back and forth, but in talking to different people, I mean, to establish Jamal Haynes as a really top-class running back in the ACC after transitioning him from the wide receiver position, currently ranked number 23, recruiter in the 2026 class. When you look at the staff Franklin's been able to build out, there's a lot of ace recruiters, no doubt. Ty Howell in the DMV, Fontel Mines, Richmond 757, Matt Moore, more central Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. There's maybe a little bit of a hole on that southeastern quadrant, Georgia, Florida, a little bit getting into the south. And McKenzie has deep ties there, is plugged into Florida, Georgia recruiting, obviously being from down there, working at Georgia Tech. So I think from a recruiting aspect, I mean, it can't be overlooked what he brings from a different standpoint. You know, you got the DMV, you got Pennsylvania, some of those more northeastern quadrants covered, but he brings a whole new element. And I think on the field and just hearing some of the concepts that he could bring and the experience he's seen, the guys he's coached under, I think it's a really, really big addition. You know, 14 years of Division I experience. And, you know, I just wrote it and I circled it. Loved this hire in talking to different people. They could not speak highly enough. I had Ray Davis, that he had, I believe, at Vanderbilt, or one of his stops had Ray Davis. He went pro, and then Jamal Haynes, probably most recently and notably someone under his tutelage that had success. So I think an absolute home run hire for James Franklin. I know there was a lot of frustration or confusion about retention or going out and getting new guys, but this was, I think, a really big get. Next up for a new guy coming in, Chuck Losey, I believe how you say it, strength and conditioning coordinator who's been with James Franklin for a long time, over a decade coaching with James Franklin from Vanderbilt to Penn State. I think he officially got upgraded as the head guy in 2017 with James Franklin, but I know 2014 maybe his title changed, but was there for the Big Ten, all those 10-win seasons at Penn State, put all those guys in the NFL that have come from Penn State. So he's done it at a really high level. And when you think about what Virginia Tech obviously had to, Brent Pry made the decision to fire Dwight Galt a couple years ago, and there's a lot of stuff there that we'll have to get into on another episode about why those decisions had to be made and some issues along the way, because strength and conditioning is very important. And obviously there was a lot lacking there and caused some injuries, some different things. You bring in Jarrett Ferguson, sort of that stopgap year, someone who was on staff. I think Jarrett Ferguson honestly had a really nice year. And some of the reporting that I heard, and I came on the show and said, I thought he had a pretty good opportunity to be retained on staff, not as the head guy, but potentially does not sound like that is going to come to fruition. But with Lousy, he's obviously sent a ton of guys to the NFL. Great record of that. And I think another guy, obviously the connection to Franklin, but someone who is very impressive in his own right. And an aspect of the game that is often overlooked, but is super important. Then next up, sort of the news of the day, but also last Thursday, heard some of this. Well, let's just call it the Roccos. First off, Danny Rocco, longtime FCS head coach, has coached at a lot of different stops, but most recently the VMI head coach right up the road to Lexington, Virginia. It looks like he's going to be poised for a senior analyst type off the field role with James Franklin. He has connections. He was a letterman at Penn State. He also played at Wake Forest, but someone who has a connection with James Franklin for that 2022 season, joined on staff as a senior analyst, has a ton of experience in coaching, 40 years experience. Now this is someone who he's obviously spent 40 years in coaching. It's a really big family of football. I believe his dad, Frank Rocco, Coach Ball, was a quarterback at Penn State. His son, David Rocco, is going to join the staff. We'll get into that a little bit. I believe his other son, Michael Rocco, quarterback at Virginia. So, a great tutelage there. Obviously someone who's seen a lot of ball. It's a really tough environment when you get not only older in age, but as time develops in college football to have success at a program like VMI. And this seems like a really nice opportunity to be familiar with Franklin and just have someone who's seen a lot of college football in your ear. So I don't think this can be overlooked. So nearly 40 years experience, 128 career wins. Coach at Liberty, Richmond, and Delaware as a head guy. So he was a senior analyst at Penn State. Like I said, he went there, was a letterman, but also went to Wake Forest, played linebacker. And, mixed in with this, Virginia Tech still is scheduled to open up their 2026 season with VMI. So that'll be sort of a funny dynamic. Obviously, no official announcements on these, but a lot of momentum building that way. Heard that this afternoon specifically. But tying into David Rocco, his son, who was the assistant tight end coach at Penn State and was reported on VT Scoop earlier in the week, Thursday or even Wednesday, that it was expected that he was going to come follow. There was always a feeling in talking to different people that both Roccos, Danny Rocco as well, would follow. And that sort of came to fruition this afternoon in talking to different people. So obviously Ty Howe has a great track record. Rocco was up there coaching Tyler Warren, some really elite dynamic tight ends. So to get those guys in and a little bit more clarity on the picture of who's coming in as coaches, I think it's a really nice add and good family of football. If you know football in Virginia, pretty much, the Roccos extend out pretty big, their net. So this is really big for the region, I think, as well. And also just experience in the game doesn't hurt. With that, obviously, like I said, with Rocco, the latest updates on all this stuff, vtscoop.com. Go get over on the Tunnel message board. We have a ton of content coming out, new recruiting updates. We'll touch on some of that here, but we can't get to all of it. So make sure to get over vtscoop.com, 50% off. There's absolutely no better time to jump over there. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and go get over there because you'll get some insight onto this. because we only do the show a couple times a week. Over there, we can post stuff, whatever, have live discourse. I know the live Q&A is cool, but over there, we can also have discourse in the live chat. So vtscoop.com. But next up, outside of the new hires, let's talk about the retention. There's a lot of perception of keeping versus going external and what's better. From the jump, it was pretty much understood Fontel Mines was most likely going to be retained by James Franklin on staff at probably the wide receiver position. Now, there's still some things that could play out there. It sounds like he's going to be the wide receivers coach. Richmond guy, knows a 757 well, coaching at Old Dominion, has shown his recruiting chops. This is a guy, for a time last year, after the Jamari DeLoach flip, was sitting as the number one recruiter in the ACC. So he obviously can recruit very, very well, develops. So I think that's understood. When James Franklin was at Penn State, he tried to hire Fontel Mines away a couple times. So obviously thought very highly of him. And the optics of this were pretty clear on signing day. Fontel Mines leaning in, being very involved on signing day with James Franklin. You could sort of tell the writing on the wall was there. Next up, maybe one that wasn't as locked in from the jump. I think in James Franklin's perfect world, if things fall the way they do, he would have taken Phil Trautwein down from Penn State, one of the best O-line coaches. And this is no slight on Matt Moore, but obviously Phil Trautwein goes down to his alma mater at Florida, and he's hit quite a lot on the recruiting trail here already, even during a dead period. So that'll be interesting to see. But once it seemed like Trautwein was either going to go to Florida or the pros, I think it opened James Franklin's eyes a little bit more to retaining Matt Moore. Obviously, Virginia Tech has been cycling through offensive line coaches, going from Crook to Moore. And prior to that, it was just sort of a constant revolving door. They never had the same message being preached for more than an offseason. And this was something, in talking to people even before the Franklin staff, of someone you would pound on the table to keep on staff, Matt Moore, just for the retention in this day and age of the offensive line. If you lose an O-line coach and you lose a bunch of guys to the portal, it's just really hard to rebuild those ranks. And Matt Moore, I think, is a proven guy, developer. I think if you're watching this show as opposed to Monday Night Football, thank you. But on the Pittsburgh Steelers, look, Zach Frazier, coached by Matt Moore, playing center in the NFL. So the development is there. You can see sort of the processes, what he's been able to develop, and just giving him time. This really helps. And we'll talk about this a little bit in the portal without going into details. Kyle Altuner. You got a center there that you think could be a centerpiece of your line. And this definitely helps in that aspect of retention in the transfer portal. So I think while it's not exactly a shock, there were definitely some moving pieces there, but it does sound like Matt Moore will be retained as the offensive line coach. And, he's got on the recruiting trail. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but, I think James Franklin is going to demand a lot on the recruiting trail, and we'll see how that plays out. Because I think developmentally wise, he's had a really nice track record. It's just now getting some of that top flight talent through the door. And this isn't involved in the show, but if you go look at 247sports.com, that 2027 class in Virginia, that offensive line, there's some top flight guys. So that'll definitely be interesting. Now, lastly, before we get to another little transition, I think this is something that, I haven't looked too deep in the comments, but this is something that definitely come up, as opposed to some new staff buzz and smoke. Still hearing a lot around Coach Chaos, Sean Spencer, down at Texas A&M, obviously defensive line coach down there. Great relationship with Brent Pry as well as James Franklin. Still hearing a ton of buzz there. Obviously, they've had their own shakeups today, bringing in former Virginia Tech wide receiver coach Holloman Wiggins, who then went to Saban boot camp at Alabama, is now becoming their offensive coordinator, and hiring analyst Brad Cornelson. So we'll see how that shakes out. But two former Virginia Tech guys there. It's just sort of a side note. But as well, obviously, with Coach Chaos, they've got a pretty big game coming up this Saturday, taking on Miami coming into town. But there continues to be a lot of momentum there. They're shaking up the defensive side. Obviously, Hemphill got the defensive coordinator job over there. So they're changing up, and I would not be shocked to see that move that way. But obviously, you're not going to hear really any news or grounded reporting on that until most likely after that college football playoff run is over. But still, wanted to emphasize on the new staff hire buzz, definitely hearing a lot around Sean Spencer, Coach Chaos, and Virginia Tech, and it makes sense why. But just to reiterate on that, definitely keep an eye on that. Before we get into the next thing, make sure to subscribe. We've got a ton of new viewers jumping in here. Thank you for joining us. Holiday season, Monday Night Football on. thank you for rocking with Kolby's Corner. Subscribe, like the video, share the show with a friend. We'll get into it. Big new athletic donation. There's just a lot going on with the program. So make sure to subscribe. Only college football all the time. So, yeah. But, yeah, I think today I was driving actually over by athletics, just dropping off some Christmas cards, doing some things, and it hits my phone. Big athletic donation. And there's been one that's sort of been floating out there that's maybe break this number. We'll get into that a little bit. But there's athletic donation that has been pitched out there for a while. And this one is separate to that. We'll touch on that in a second. So anyways, $20 million anonymous gift to the Virginia Tech Athletics Department, largest single donation in school history. So this obviously coincides with the broader $229 million budget plan that the board approved this offseason. I think this is really telling of the direction that Virginia Tech is going to go. And there's a lot with this. So obviously $20 million is a ton. And what I was sort of touching on right there, I think there's a donor that has an even larger fund that they're probably still working through some things that will come out later. So this was separate to that. So it sounds like there's still another large donation coming. But I think this comes on the heels of they had a big donor meeting specifically with James Franklin, talking about the future and how to stack success. So it's not just flash in the pan type moment. How do you set the groundwork so you really keep this rolling? And the early feedback from that sounds like people came out of the woodwork. There was a relighting of the fire, reinvigorated to sort of involve yourself in the program to people that have maybe closed off for a little bit. And the energy was palpable on signing day. I think you'll see it in the transfer portal. And obviously the funds help with that. But I think there's just a different mantra feeling around the program. And those were some of those early reports from obviously those big donor meetings to try and keep this thing rolling. So I think that's really positive. And, this is sort of feels like almost alignment personified. When you talk about Tim Sands' quotes, comments, I thought this was really important. When you heard it from Sands, just right down the road from the president's house, doing more with less is no longer an option. And Virginia Tech was doing that for way too long for whatever reason. Endowment funds were the way they were. And I've come on the show a lot of times, and I don't want to get down a big tangent. In this day and age, that is your front carpet. That is your show of your university. If you want these enrollment numbers to keep going, if you want to get to 40,000 undergrad or whatever big 2048 campus plan that you have, there is a direct tie to success in winning football and your perception of your school. And now there's a ton of other stuff going on that is also important. And not to discredit any of that, but athletics, specifically football success, is a massive driver of that, let alone a revenue driver. And I think obviously they've warmed up to that with the budget and as well as donations like this. So I think that's really important to finally see some of that alignment personified after I know a decade-long plus of people sort of pounding on the table for it. But I mean, $20 million, I know people will point to Michigan State, and we're talking about the Steelers a lot. Acrisure Stadium, obviously the Acrisure, I believe, founder, Michigan State alum who gave $400 million. But I mean, still a $20 million one-time donation is massive. And I think it sounds like there will be another big one coming down the pipe at some point. But yeah, just tying into that donor meeting, it just sounds like more could be coming. And there's a ton of positive momentum on that side of it. So yeah, and also just a note on this. I saw a lot of people on the website over on vtscoop.com, the message boards on Twitter saying, transfer portal is going to be awesome. It's going to be busy. And it will. But it's not this $20 million. It's not going to paying players through NIL. This is obviously more of the infrastructure back in as laid out in the budget plan. Now, this will definitely help with the NIL funds and such. But it's not that's not the pot to go get players. And I saw that was a misconception. So just to clear that up. But yeah, big donation sort of caught me by surprise. I mean, you knew there were some down the pipe, but this was not that one. So really impressive. Good work by James Franklin. Obviously someone who can sell the program. But I mean, good work. A lot of people obviously pulling the rope on that. So it's big time. You can throw money at issues that you don't always fix them, but it always helps. So I guess there's that. Make sure to subscribe. I'm going to jump into some of this portal talk, a little bit of high school recruiting, a little bit of college football, and then we'll hang out and jump in the live chat. So if you have questions, jump in the live chat. We'll answer those. Make sure to subscribe. Already got to 1,500 in 4 months. It's almost inconceivable. Could we get to 2,000 before the end of the year? That'd be crazy, but we'll see. So make sure to subscribe, share the show with a friend, and let's keep it rolling. So with the portal, I know A ton of people are going to be interested on specifics. Obviously, I don't really traffic in outing different people or individuals prior to different announcements. We'll touch on some of those things if there's specific questions or comments, give a couple use cases. But obviously, at this point right now, you're seeing different programs confirm re-signing guys, confirm guys are walking. Talks are definitely heating up. Contract negotiations are in full effect, sort of knowing where your standing is. And those decisions are going to have to be coming pretty soon. And that's sort of the understanding. So I think you'll see some movement semi-soon on both announcements of leaving, announcements of returning, and such in that manner. So I would expect to see those relatively soon. And as you've seen, I know there's been a lot of discourse like, oh, the portal doesn't open until January 2nd. How are these guys entering? Yes, it's planning to enter to get your paperwork, but they can't be contacted directly through schools yet. But there's workarounds for all these. So I would start to see some movement on that soon. It sounds like James Franklin and staff have a pretty good idea of who they want, who's valued at what, where their position is, where their standing is, and laying that out pretty clearly and saying, okay, this is where we're at. We're willing to meet here, there, or whatever, talk about whatever, but this is where we're at. You can go check where you stand in the market, and we'll go and take our ball to the portal. So it'll definitely be interesting. Would expect to see some movement on that front relatively soon, as I said. But yeah, sounds like they're right in the midst of some of those contract negotiations today. Just with the general transfer portal, you saw multiple former five-star quarterbacks, DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola, both enter the portal. Saw Emily Proud, fellow CBS Sports team member, say 7 out of the 8 five-star quarterbacks from the 2023 and 2024 cycle have entered the portal. Jackson Arnold, Lagway, Raiola, Dante Moore, Malachi Nelson, whatever. I might be forgetting a couple, but the one that stuck was Arch Manning at Texas, which is really, really crazy to see how I think the recruiting metrics overall have gotten better. It's just this crazy portal cycle of being a quarterback. What is it? The last 4 Heisman winners have been transfers. So it's just a completely new age. I think you have to adapt with the times and not be a Clemson, but at the same time, not be a Florida State, not be a Colorado where you live and die by in that balance. You've seen it now play out for a couple of years where the best teams are still balancing and obviously building on high school recruiting, but maybe honestly mostly backfilling and getting their guy at quarterback through the transfer portal. And I think that's what James Franklin and Virginia Tech is going to do, and it's what they're going to have to do. So vtscoop.com, follow on the socials at Kolby_Crawford as the portal heats up. Obviously sort of how we kind of got our start covering the transfer portal. It's going to be a very busy season, balancing some senior trips and trying to get the best coverage for the transfer portal. So we're going to be doing it all. That quarterback search, I know everyone wants to talk about Danny O'Brien and the quarterback coach. The quarterback they bring in I think is going to be the single largest hinge point for Virginia Tech in 2026. And, it's just the day and age of college football. So we will have all the coverage. As of right now, I know people are asking for smoke. There's not much out there. Colton Joseph, there's a little bit there's a connection, obviously. Ethan Grunkmeyer, obviously that's a name that keeps coming up. It's so early. You just saw Raiola. You just saw Lagway. You just saw Sorsby enter. And Brendan Sorsby. Some of these guys have locations in mind already. But as these guys enter, it changes the dichotomy for everyone else. So one day on December 15th, you could be working one way and something completely different could change. A different school could open up. So there's a lot that could change here. As we get news, this will be the first place it will be coming out. So make sure to subscribe. But yeah, any questions pertaining to that, jump them in the live chat, and we'll try and touch on that. It's going to be crazy. Recruiting is going to heat up. It's sort of like, when you get older, you can start to feel, it's about to rain in the joints. That's how it feels about this time of the year for me. You got finals. It's getting cold. There's so much right before the Christmas season. And it's like, that's the transfer portal's coming. You can almost just feel it, sense it. But we're very excited. So make sure to stay tuned in here, vtscoop.com, and on the socials for all that. But yeah, if you have any questions around the portal, we'll touch on those in the Q&A. Make sure to subscribe. Like I said, it costs nothing. It's free. It helps us out a ton. But yeah, jumping into it, let's talk a little bit of high school recruiting, get into some college football talk, and then we'll jump into Q&As. Thank you, guys. First off, I think really the main things in this dead period, and maybe people got the wrong perception of the dead period. So you can't host guys, you can't go in, but you can text, call, and talk to a lot of these guys. So Leighton Von Brandt, top 100 lineman from Delaware. Just had a story up on him on vtscoop.com. Make sure to go check it out. Top 100 offensive tackle. I think top 60. But, this is someone who committed to Penn State, has a really great relationship with James Franklin. But I think a lot of that relationship is tied to Phil Trotwine down there at Florida. That would be a team to watch for me, as obviously he decommitted from Penn State. But Matt Moore called and re-offered him today. Sounds like they had a great chat. Ty Howell was in the room. Offensive coordinator Danny O'Brien, quarterback's coach, was in the room when they talked. So there's familiarity there. He has a ton of respect and a relationship with Slim, Chris Mann on staff, James Franklin as well. Says he's definitely going to be on campus this spring. So that's someone, they're kind of showing up late to the party, but it's a completely different staff. So I think they're right in the mix, but definitely Trotwine at Florida could be a team to watch. Cam Wagner, 4-star offensive lineman from Illinois. Sounds like as well. Matt Moore offered. Matt Moore has been very busy, since that news came out. 3 offers on 3 really top flight guys. So I think that offensive line recruiting, to see how it stacks going forward, will be really important to see. Cam Wagner got an offer. Update over on vtscoop.com from Alan True. Another guy that you could expect to probably see on campus, Terrence Smith, another 4-star from up there in Pennsylvania, sort of James Franklin stomping grounds, got offered by Matt Moore today. So 3 4-star guys in the last couple of days. They're being targeted there, something that they haven't really done through the high school ranks. And I think they're going to punch their way into a lot of these battles that Virginia Tech hasn't been in for a while. Next up, I've been getting a lot of questions on both Michigan commits and signees, Travis Johnson and Andre Clark, 2 Virginia guys with the Sharon Moore situation unfolding the way it did. Recruits sort of being left in the dark, some guys backing out of their letters of intent. On Travis Johnson, this was one. On signing day, I felt pretty confident that Virginia Tech could get in the picture. After the Sharon Moore news, I felt like Virginia Tech could still work its way into the picture. And even now, there's still a small inkling feeling like Virginia Tech could work its way into the picture. But I feel like that is waning a little bit for Travis Johnson. As I said, there's a little bit of intel, a little bit of just feeling and read on the situation. At some point, one way is pulling so hard that like Virginia Tech is going to find a way. And then you talk or you get a feeling on this other side. And it's, maybe just don't overthink the room. It sounds like he's just going to end up at Michigan. I would probably be leaning closer to that way right now, feeling like Michigan is back in a dominant position with Travis Johnson. But for Andre Clark, that's one. And as to my knowledge, I think it's an important preface that neither of these guys have technically enrolled yet in Michigan. As to my knowledge, here on Monday, December 15th at 8:58 p.m. Eastern time. Andre Clark, though, might be one. Hermitage High School, Fontaine Linesman to Hermitage. They definitely waned off down the stretch. And even on signing day, it was Andre Clark was intending to sign with Michigan. But I think Virginia Tech could potentially jump in there. I felt more confident about Travis probably a week ago to the day. And now things are probably shifting a little bit towards Andre Clark. So that'll be one to watch. Nothing really concrete on those guys. The latest I get an update on that, it'll be on vtscoop.com. So go subscribe over there. 50% off. $60 a year. I know. You can get this show for free, but both are really great options if you're involved in college football. Any team across all college teams, college recruiting, transfer portal, you get free access to message boards, the latest insight. It's just a great opportunity. Next up. Yeah, I think that pretty much ties up Andre Clark and Travis Johnson. If you have any more questions on high school recruiting, go ahead, jump those in the live chat. But yeah, I think some overarching college football news before we sort of wrap up and hop to some Q&A. The Heisman ceremony, I know, had a lot of people up in arms. I'm obviously not a Heisman voter. I just talk about college football on this little YouTube show here from the great town of Blacksburg, Virginia, and sometimes Norfolk. I don't have a vote. If I did have a vote, I would have voted for Diego Pavia. I think what he did in one less game. I know a lot of people are pointing to Fernando Mendoza, his Heisman moment in the Penn State game. I was in State College for that game. What an incredible performance. The Big Ten championship. He had a fine game. Did he have a great game? No, and that's one more game in the sample size that I think set it over for Fernando. But, I mean, when you look to it, I don't think it was the most overwhelming Heisman class. Now, a lot of that, people comparing numbers to former guys to this age, there's going to be a fall off because the new clock rules. The clock doesn't stop all the time now. So a lot of those inflated numbers are going to look different. But, yes, was this the most exciting Heisman class in recent memory? No, not at all. But I think Diego Pavia, what he did for his team, probably falls more in line with what I would have qualified as, Heisman performance. Now, the antics afterward definitely probably looked out for the Heisman committee organization's benefits. So, obviously, the tirade he sort of went on after and cursing out the voters and screwing Indiana and all that. But, I think both were very, very deserving. It's just a shame for some of that fallout. Next up, college football playoff. Like I said, Virginia Tech and some other people should have a vested interest probably in that Texas A&M game with Coach Chaos and some Well, the fallout that could come from that game, I don't know how I feel about the rematches in the college football playoff. It's just like, why? Expanded enough, Ole Miss, Tulane. We've seen that game. Alabama, Oklahoma. And to think like you could have had Bama, Oklahoma, like you could have had some of these games 3 times. Like you had Bama, Georgia in the regular season, Bama, Georgia in the SEC championship. And I don't know how the bracket falls, but you could see that again in the college football playoff. It's just, I don't know, like, is it created just to keep having the best teams play each other or like unique matchups? So I don't know. I think it's interesting. We'll see how Bama shakes out and how those guys handle the transfer portal, because it kind of puts them behind the 8 ball like the later you go into the season. Obviously, Bo Pribula last year for Penn State, you didn't have to look too far. James Franklin's very familiar with that. Last year, Bo Pribula, their backup quarterback for their entire run, wasn't on the team because he had to go look for a different option. And obviously ends up at Missouri, but it sounds like he took a stop in Blacksburg last year as well. Not a lot of people know about that. But yeah, with that, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. Let's jump into the question and answer section. Let's jump into some Q&A. Subscribe to the show, like the video, share it with a friend. I'm about 30 minutes on a monologue. If you have any more questions, let's touch on those. Let's just do the Harry Potter, throw those up in the air. Feels like finals, man. All right. Got Chris Lester in here. What's up, man? Appreciate you rocking out. Got Amari Smith in here talking about Coach Chaos, Sean Spencer. Touch on that a little bit. I think Virginia Tech is going to be definitely involved with Sean Spencer. There's a ton of momentum and smoke around that situation. So I would definitely watch that one. Obviously, Texas A&M playing in the college football playoff muddies those waters a little bit. But, definitely one to watch. Now, for Anthony Poindexter, I know that DB, the cornerback, the safeties room is going to be – there's a lot up in the air there. You're coming from, obviously, a Virginia guy and a legend at the University of Virginia to come to Virginia Tech. He's had opportunities in the past. Lynchburg guy. There's connections there, but I don't know. One day you hear one thing really positive. The next day it sounds like it's not going to happen. As of this point, he's obviously not going to be at Penn State, but I'm not so sure about Virginia Tech. Now, something could flip, but I just think that's going to be a really hard jump for him to make, obviously, with the connection to Virginia. Got Gunk14 saying, let's get it to 54% on the subscriber versus non-unsubscribed. Yeah, if we can sit right at 54%, shout out Orange and Maroon on the message board, I'd be totally down with that. Got Denzel Jones saying, happy Monday, Kolby. I see the offensive staff has filled out. Any word on defense? Still shaking through that. Obviously still things working on Brent Pry's side of the ball. That's going to sound so weird trying to get him built like into your brain as defensive coordinator. If anyone's joining late over on vtscoop.com, I meant to shout this out earlier in the show, but we got it pinned at the, sort of the top of the landing page. James Franklin, Virginia Tech, coaching staff tracker, latest hires and updates. It's free. It's right there pinned at the top for the latest updates for all the time. So make sure if you just want to pin that, bookmark that. It's a really great outlet. You got offensive coordinator Ty Howe, and this is just sort of a refresher if you missed some stuff. Defensive coordinator Brent Pry. Special teams coordinator, not in there, but Lustig potentially coming down. And that's to pair with Matt Colangelo, special teams analyst at Penn State. Sounds like he'll be joining on. Quarterbacks coach Danny O'Brien, running backs Norville McKenzie, offensive line Matt Moore, tight ends Ty Howe, obviously being the offensive coordinator, assistant tight ends David Rocco, wide receivers Fontel Mines, D-line still up in the air, linebackers Brent Pry, most likely taking the linebackers, and then cornerbacks and safeties still kind of up in the air, touching about Sean Spencer, Dex, and some other names potentially filling out there. But it's got all the personnel guys, strength and conditioning, and we'll be adding more, obviously, with Danny Rocco and some of those things as they come out. So still working through some things. Dan Connor, obviously, there was talk about at the linebacker position. Sounds like Pry is going to take those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how the defensive staff shakes out. Got Jay sort of saying the same thing, quarterback and safeties coach. Not a lot there at this moment. I would say on the defensive side of the ball, the number one thing I'm hearing most about right now is Coach Chaos, Sean Spencer along the defensive line, which would be another absolute A-plus home run hire, recruiting development. Someone who tried his hand at the pro ranks, came back down and has had immense success at Texas A&M. Number one defense in sacks, number one defense in, I think, tackles for loss, sack yards. I mean, what an amazing job. So that's the one I'm hearing most about right now. Got Justin in here saying, Merry Christmas, bro. Appreciate it. Transfer portal going to hit like crack. It's going to be really busy. So subscribe. I'm telling you, this is going to be the best place to be. It's going to be so busy. A lot's going to get lost in the weeds. This is the best place to be. Appreciate it. Got Mike talking about the schedule next year about dumping either VMI or JMU. It sounds like JMU will be pushed back yet again. Obviously, that game's already been moved from the 25 season back. So, got Dale Kaiser saying, do you see the hires as upgrades, and what do the players think? Yeah, great question. First off, I think starting with that, directly with the players thing, when Brent Pry was hired, sitting right there on Sunday in church when that was coming out from Matt Zenitz, and I quote tweeted it and said, based on a conversation from the night before with the player, it was something to the effect of, we still like Pry. We think he should have called the defense this year. So obviously they still really like Coach Pry. I think a lot of the semantics of the dynamics are they going to listen? I think some of that's played out, and sort of talked myself even a little bit off that ledge and talking to different people obviously more connected than I'm or directly involved in this situation than me. So I think there's still a fine resolve with Pry. Obviously, there's still some questions on the defensive side of the ball, how that shakes out. Ty Howell seems to be positively viewed from the offense early on. Obviously, Fontel Mines is liked. Matt Moore is adored in that offensive line room. David Rocco and some of these other guys haven't seen early input. But yeah, I think it's automatically an upgrade. You talk about Norville McKenzie. Just looking into him and talking to some different people, I think that's an incredible hire, and starting to like it more by the second. Chuck Lousy at strength and conditioning. When you see his track record of what he's put into the NFL, a lot to like there. So I think they've been really targeted. And overall, obviously, there's some retention, and it's very, very different. But you do have a head coach at defensive coordinator. I think overall, it's a solid staff and getting stronger, like bringing in Danny Rocco. I think some of these support guys are going to be really important. But good question. Mike saying, I can see a good number entering the portal. Yeah, I would expect probably 20 to 30 guys coming through the transfer portal. Probably going to be quite a few, obviously following from Penn State. Now maybe that number changes a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see quite a few guys. There's going to be attrition leaving Virginia Tech, and obviously with the new high school class and making room for this class, there's going to be – but I mean, think about how big the transition was last year. I think you had close to 50, 60 guys leave last year. I mean, last offseason was really kind of an exodus, and I think you're going to see a lot of that this year. So VTScoop.com and the social is going to be a good place to be. But, yeah, and I would expect to see some movement on that semi-soon as some of these contract situations work out. But it's going to be really busy. And, you know, I think you've got a very experienced staff that holds firm with their line in the sand and sort of understands their standing and how they're going to operate the show, which I think is really positive for Virginia Tech in this day and age. To have people who are experienced and pretty convicted in how they feel on value and how you build out a roster. Workshop Kolby, yep. And this is a grimy show, man. It's down to the nuts and bolts. We just give it straight. Yeah, Mike saying the current O-line isn't all that bad. Will be better next year and as they are healthy. Yeah, it'll be interesting. You know, like there's guys you can look at now. You've heard certain things about possible retention. But yeah, who sticks around? What does the depth look like? Who do you bring from Penn State? Who do you bring from the transfer portal? Obviously, who could maybe someone step up from the high school ranks and contribute early that just surprises you. I think obviously having the retention of Matt Moore is really important currently to get the transfer portal board built out right now on December 15th. He knows where he's going back to. He knows the house he's leasing. Like he knows where he lives. He knows the lay of the land. He can go offer 2027 guys, which is really important. So I think to get that head start at a position that outside of the quarterback position is probably going to have the heaviest impact on Virginia Tech's success in 2026, I think it's really, really important. Got Magerna 1545 saying, any news on the linebackers coach? At one point, the guy from Penn State was rumored, but have heard nothing else since then. Yeah, it sounds like Brent Pry is going to take linebackers and coach that position as well as obviously being the defensive coordinator. That's what it's sounding like right now. And obviously, none of this is official. they'll probably work to get this official announcement all put together and package it out with a bow on it and ship it out once they get all these guys. But at this point, it sounds like Brent Pry will be coaching the linebackers in 2026. Yeah, so just touch on this a little bit, Heath. Are you hearing anything about how players are feeling about the coaching hires? Did the offensive line recruits expect the Penn State offensive line coach to join Franklin? That one wasn't always expected. That was one that Franklin obviously made a push to try and bring Trotwine down. It looked pretty clear that once there was the Florida shakeup, he was either going to go try his hand at the pros or go back to his alma mater in Florida once Summerall got brought on staff there. So I don't think there was any misunderstanding there. But overall, I think the perception is pretty positive on a lot of these new hires. And I mean, but a lot of it's new. They haven't met them. So a lot of it's just like everyone else. You're reading stuff on a tweet. You're reading stuff on a wiki page. You're trying to talk to different people who have adjacent connections and then try and paint the clearest picture before you get on the field for winter workouts. Just looking through some of these comments. Appreciate the support. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Yeah, got Joshua 5086 saying, so if James Franklin is having tough conversations with regards to scholarships, are they given every year individually, or do you have it your entire enrollment unless you do something to lose it? Yeah, this is sort of where it gets murky in this current day and age of college football. I mean, this has really sort of turned into a business, and sometimes you have those tough conversations, like I said, where it's, hey, this is what is going to happen. A lot of times players at different institutions want to stay, and they're politely sort of shown the door. And it's just the way it is at top tier college football, and especially in the SEC where you only had like 85 scholarships available. Obviously, the 105 roster cap limit things a little bit to not allow your roster to be as dense as a lot of coaches would like. So those tough conversations are tough conversations when you sort of commit yourself to a place, and there's just a lot of conflicting feelings on how you work around a lot of those things. I mean, some people will be encouraged to hit the portal. Some people, you're going to have those conversations where they're going to want to stay and think they're worth a certain number, and they're not going to hear that number back, and same vice versa. So a lot of it is really tough. It's a delicate tightrope to walk, but I think that's where it's really important that you walk that line and you don't get walked over. So yeah. Got Patrick Beckford saying, how about Marcus Hagan switching to corner coach? I'm not sure you see that development. I know he coached receivers, I think, pretty much exclusively. So I don't know if you see him switch to the other side of the ball. Hagan's is still really interesting. Hearing some stuff around him. I don't know where he'll fit on the staff, if he will come, but that's one interesting where his name kind of keeps floating out there, but you're just looking at the Jenga puzzle pieces, like where does it fit? I'm not exactly sure. Got VT15 Hokey saying, yeah, that's a good question. Any idea what happened with Brooks? Sounded like a lock for retention. It's a great question. So early on, Fontel Mines was definitely not leader in the clubhouse, definitely someone that was going to be retained. Matt Moore was close second, and you can go back to these shows and see that Matt Moore definitely was one of those names and sort of maybe wandered off a little bit with Trotwine, and then it seemed like Matt Moore. And Brooks was one that really kind of came on late. They maybe missed on Sider and some of those other running back coaches, and it was like, sounds like Ty Howell's going to interview Coach Brooks, and he might have a great opportunity at the job. Now, I'm not so sure how that went down. I don't know how the interview went. A lot of the behind-the-scenes workings, we'll try to get that coverage. And as soon as we hear the backstory on it, vtscoop.com. But, yeah, I mean, I think the last time we went live, it was trending towards he was going to have the interview with Howell and probably was in line for a good opportunity to get the Virginia Tech running backs coach job, and obviously didn't play that way. And I think McKenzie is a really, really great addition. Obviously, it's the smallest of overlaps, if any, with James Franklin. I'm not exactly sure the connection or kind of how that popped up, but I think it's a really, really, really great external get for James Franklin and co. And Ty Howell. Good question here, Glitch. What are the biggest portal needs? Off the top of my head, quarterback. Without a doubt, that's somewhere you're going to have to attack aggressively and backfill, because Virginia Tech's sort of been hamstrung now for a couple years by the quarterback position. And in this day and age, you really have to have a game changer at that signal caller role. So definitely there, offensive line as well as defensive line, a couple dynamic edge rushers. Now it's the positions in the NFL that are really expensive. Quarterback, offensive tackle, edge rusher, they're going to cost you, but I think you have to get a couple dynamic pass rushers, a couple experienced guys along that offensive line, and definitely a quarterback. I mean, you could see some guys on the secondary stepping up. You got some linebacker prospects you like, probably a linebacker. I think they're really going to attack a lot of spots. I think you're going to see quite a few tight ends come in from Penn State to try and run the offense how once. We've talked about that. And Matt Henderson, and Luke Reynolds, some of these names. Matt Henderson and Luke Reynolds, some guys to watch. So, but most important positions, I would say, quarterback, offensive line, and edge rushers. Got Josh. Any word on Jarrett Ferguson? Touch on this a little bit earlier in the show. Sounds like he was given an opportunity to stay on in an assistant role. Does not sound like it's happening at this point. Not confirmed on that, though. Miles Johnson, do you think we keep any quarterbacks on the current team? I think Keldon Ryan. I think that's definitely one that you have a chance to say. I think A.J. Brand probably ends up staying on the roster. Does he stay at the quarterback designation? I'm not so sure. But, I mean, pretty much every other quarterback on the roster I don't foresee being with Virginia Tech past January as of this point. But I could see Keldon Ryan sticking on. I have a couple of his clips that I'll have to post or have him on the show and do something with over this offseason. So stay tuned in for that, some coverage. And, sort of talking out loud there. So Andrew saying what positions are left to fill. So once again, I'll shout out vtscoop.com. Pinned on our landing page. It's completely free. It's called the James Franklin Virginia Tech Coaching Staff Tracker, latest hires and updates on vtscoop.com. It's updated as new updates come out. So offensive coordinator Ty Howell is filled. Special teams coordinator officially, if they get Lustig, sounds like they're working that way. That'd be one to watch. So special teams coordinator is open. D-line is open, but we've talked about Sean Spencer potentially filling there. And then cornerbacks and safeties are still open. So I hope that answers your question. Got Chewbacca saying, will there be any open tryouts? I want to show my pancaking skills. But Copeland in there. Well, I know obviously a big thing for James Franklin and Brent Pry previously was open walk-on tryouts. It's changed a little bit with the 105 scholarship rule. But yeah, I mean, there might be opportunities. I would say stay plugged into their socials to see if you want to go have an open tryout. I think Copeland will be really interesting. I think he's looking at – it sounds like he got a pretty beefy compensation package. So, I mean, obviously the pros going to give that a fair look, someone who's going to tear up the combine. But I think Virginia Tech has put themselves in a really good spot. Obviously with the third team, all ACC guy, one of the top-end talent guys on the roster that you really want to keep, someone that I think has a big decision to make, but I think I like where Virginia Tech sits with him as of this moment. VT Hokie saying 2002 saying, do you expect Pop to leave? As of the moment, yes, I'd expect Pop Watson to probably enter the transfer portal. Got Dale Kaiser talking about the Hokie Stone jerseys. I thought that was pretty cool. They pulled that out for the Miami game. I mean, I think that Miami game, when you look back on it, not results on the field, but I mean, off the field, the guys they hosted and potentially their impact at Virginia Tech could end up being one of the biggest weekends ever for Virginia Tech football. I mean, Mickens, Marlon Bright, Purgatory Labindis, Pierce Peterson, Troy Hune, Maddox Cochran, so many 2027 guys, Tyrell Grant. I mean, so many guys were there that weekend. I mean, what a going back to when we were covering the coaching hire, that Miami weekend was always circled, and it kind of came to fruition, even just looking back on it. Got Curtis L. Hairston. What's your thoughts on the tight end room? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really good players in that room. You obviously got Jarickis Harrison as well as Benji Gosnell. In Montgomery's offense, probably not highlighted the way that they will be in Howell's, depending on how things shake out. Now, both those guys are going to be hearing from different suitors, obviously. I know the portal isn't open, but, there's back channels being worked on all these players. So, obviously, Harrison being a guy who was a quarterback in high school or been offered through a camp and worked his way on a scholarship. Benji Gosnell, former four-star guy, committed to Ohio State. I think those are two guys that you want to keep for retention, but there's a lot that's going to play out there. And I think Howell's definitely going to bring some guys with him. You talk about Reynolds, Henderson, some of these other guys. But I think the tight end position is going to be something where I know Howell hasn't obviously called plays for a full season. I would heavily presume the tight end position is going to be a massive point of emphasis for this offense moving forward. So I think overall it's probably one of the strongest position rooms, especially after this portal window, with who they're going to be able to bring in. So that sort of just ties into what I just said. Do we know what this offense will look like with how? I'm not sure. I mean, I would expect a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of multiple tight end sets, but I mean, there's not much out there. He hasn't called plays for a full season, so he's got a lot of fingerprints on him, but I think still a lot to play out. He's saying, how is Brooks' departure going to affect the running back room? I don't really see it affecting the running back room. If you want to talk retention-wise, obviously you had Mickens sign. I feel good about Jeff Overton and Marcellus Hawkins being retained as of this moment. I know the portal's looming. I would not expect at this point Jeff Overton or Marcellus Hawkins to leave at this point. I think Virginia Tech sits in a pretty good spot with both those guys retention-wise, so I don't think it really will. We'll see how when McKenzie gets here, how that's received, but as of right now, I don't think it will affect personnel too much. Andrew saying, how is OC and tight end, Mines wide receiver? Yeah, at this point, that's what it sounds like. Now, obviously, none of this is official, but how is tight end's coach in his bio? And Mines sounds like he's going to stick at wide receiver. Got Denzel Jones saying, do you see any playmakers at wide receiver on the roster besides Green, or do we need to go get a few? I think they will definitely go try the transfer market at wide receiver, but I think you've got playmakers. And I know I'll get crucified for this, and honestly, rightfully so, but I'll keep rocking with this. On the YouTube channel, go check out the interview with Keelan Brody Adams. Great long-form interview we had last offseason, about 25 minutes. I know he was banged up all year this year. This is someone that has the VHSL record for receiving yards. Talk to any GM in the Power 4, or just across FBS. Any GM looks at that room and could handpick a player. That is one that is getting circled and looked at. I think Brody Adams, Snook has shown some things. There's other guys in that room. Obviously, Aiden Green, I think, is a top flight guy, but I think Brody and potentially Snook, if he keeps to develop and build there, are a couple guys without having the roster in front of me. But they will go out. I mean, look at Matt Alton. That's a guy from Portsmouth who went to Penn State. You have Fat Rat Brown coming in. I think he's really dynamic, but I think they will go out and probably try and get another guy. Appreciate all the support in the comments. That's a good question as well. Penn State quarterback Grunk, Ethan Grunkmeyer coming. But that's what I said. I touched on it earlier. Colton Joseph, Ethan Grunkmeyer, two really easy names to sort of put together right now. I think it'll be really interesting to see how that market shapes out. Does Grunkmeyer stay at Penn State? Does he enter? Does he follow Franklin? Does he go somewhere else? It'll be interesting to see. People have mixed reviews. I think it's really early to make a claim on the quarterback market before you sort of know the full deck of cards you're dealing with. So that's what I'll say. It's definitely a name to watch, though, obviously with the connection. Got Mike saying Brody is legit. Stud and will make plays. Green, Snook liking them all. Yep, that's sort of where I'm at as well. Yeah, Adam saying, going back to the running back question, does Franklin go to the Fuente route and have 6 to 8 running backs on the roster and go with what probably had with 4 running backs to play with? No, I don't think they'll get to a point where they have 6 to 8 running backs, scholarship running backs out there. For next year, I mean, you have Mickens, Overton, Hawkins at this point, and you'll see sort of what else they do. But that's just off the top of my head. But I don't think 6 to 8 will come up. Got Andrew saying, looks like Nebraska quarterback could be going to Oregon. Yeah, I mean, it's early for a lot of that stuff. You'll hear Miami floated for Raiola, Oregon floated for someone else. It's going they're going to have their pick of the litter. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those dominoes start to fall. Got Andrew saying, this is really early to sort of project out. Any idea how many scholarships available for the 27 class? I would expect classes in that 25, 20 to 30, 25-ish range going forward. It's a program that's going to be built through high school, so maybe upwards of 25 to 30 per class. I mean, it's not going to be some of these massive bloated, inflated classes like West Virginia or North Carolina, but I wouldn't expect last year Virginia Tech where you only brought in 15 guys from high school. If that's what you're talking about. But yeah, I think that pretty much touches on all the questions from the live chat. Thank you guys so much. Genuinely. The reason for the season, it really does sort of make you reflect on the entire year, at least this football season, and getting the show going and off the ground. Just trying to keep producing the best content and production for everyone. So It's just been a ton of fun getting this all going. So thank you guys. Make sure to subscribe to the show. If you've had fun with this, please share the show with a friend. Just talking college football a couple times a week. But yeah, vtscoop.com, 50% off. Subscribe to the show. It's going to get so extremely busy heading into this transfer portal, but it's going to be really exciting across all fronts. So enjoy the college football playoff this weekend. Not sure if we'll be able to fit in the live show between now and then. No show Wednesday night if you're just joining. But subscribe and follow on the socials for updates on when the next show will be. If there's any live breaking news, this is the place to be. So subscribe, like the video. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the games this weekend. Spend time around the people that mean the most to you. Don't forget the reason for the season. Have a great rest of your night. See you next Monday, Saturday, whenever. And God bless.